on. Woo! All right, we are live.
Well,
Bye. Yay.
Okay, so do we want to start by talking about the questions from Bach Cheeto?
yeah.
Okay. Let me find my questions I answered. Does anyone have theirs up?
I have the list of questions up from the website. I can read a couple.
Yeah. That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
I've got mine. I've got the list up also.
The first, for the grades 3 through 5 discussion questions, the first one was, why did Martha Tom cross the river? Then there was, why did her mother need blackberries? I don't know if anyone has anything to say about those.
I had said for the river one, I said, there's multiple answers. That would be a good time for discussion. Maybe possibly having friendship as an answer or something besides just berries. Especially for little kids.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, she was probably curious about what was going on over there.
Right. Especially if especially since she knows she's not supposed to go over there. So you tell a kid, don't do something, and that's the first thing they want to do. So
Right.
Yeah.
I actually got a copy of this book because I got it used. It just happened to be signed by the author, too.
Oh.
What?
ooh.
On Amazon.
Tim Tingle.
Yeah. Really.
Okay.
What do you guys think about question 3? Was Martha Tom an angel?
Yeah.
I thought the whole, that everyone was, Christian and religious in the story was kind of interesting. It, I mean, I know that was, it was a common thing that at that time we were really gung-ho about spreading Christianity to everywhere possible, so
Right.
I'm sure it was, everyone, not everyone, but it probably was very likely that both of those communities were Christian and going to church and everything like that, but I thought it was interesting.
Right. Well, especially if they were living in that close of a proximity to white people. I mean, even though they weren't part of that community, especially if they were that close in proximity, I think it's a fair assumption that they would have been influenced, at least for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There was one question that was asking about Little Mo, and I think, Courtney, did you answer that one?
Oh, yeah, about Little Mo and how it was a reference to in the Bible, and Moses leads Israelites to the promised land or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
how he led his people over, and they both were miraculous water crossings, so that was kind of interesting, the references there.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. The whole that's part of why I thought that question about Martha Tom and is she an angel? That's part of why I thought that was so interesting, because the whole book is really after I read the questions, I was this is a lot more religious than I would have given it credit for in the beginning of reading it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that reading that to a group of children that they would have experienced, that they would understand all of that. But as an adult, I personally, I'm not religious at all. I never have been. My family's not religious. And so I kind of have tried to stay away from that kind of stuff. And so I think this is a good story even without any of that. So could be discussed or could not be discussed up to the teacher, up to the students.
Right. I didn't get the Little Mo reference at all. I was I don't know.
Yeah.
So I get you. I think, it doesn't need to really be said, but maybe there is some.
Right.
Yeah.
If the instructor wanted to, or if it was appropriate. So.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I felt that whole kind of scene was when he was saying that he couldn't like cross the river because he had never done it like in the dark before, and his dad was like, "Oh, you can do it because your name's Moses." So then he just like magically could do it. I don't know. I thought it was weird. It wasn't like any kind of like character development. Like it wasn't, you know, he didn't like. That's not the right term I'm looking for. I guess he like didn't.
Well, it was sudden, right?
There's some kind of like struggle that he like has, and then he has to, you know,
Yeah.
like work. It's usually like some working hard to like overcome something, but it was just like
Right.
magical. Oh, your name's Moses. Oh, you're right. I can do this. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm not religious. Maybe that I feel like it was a little big of a leap.
Abrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then that could tie in, well, maybe Martha Tom really was an angel, so it was all kind of like miraculous.
Mhm.
I
Right.
don't know.
Right.
So then
It
if
was
she's
all
an
just-
angel, like, is it fake? Is this, like, not actually happening? Or I'm confused. Like, what happens if she's an angel? Does that mean that, like, this still happens, but, like, she's not actually there? Like, I don't
I think
She-
it would go into more of the fairy tale, folk tale genre then.
Oh.
Even
Right.
with the like a whole where they like disappeared when they were like invisible, walking away from the like guards with those hounds.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
The whole book kind of changed and got like it seemed to me like it got a little bit less like historical fiction and a little more like
Yeah, folk tale.
yeah.
I think that she could be seen as like a you know how you watch like a God, every like TV show in the 90s did it. So there'd be like a Christmas episode where there'd be an angel and someone would not know that it was an angel or something.
Oh,
And that was the entity or the being that ended up like bridging, like bringing the runaway child back home or something. There was always some sort of thing like that. And so that could be sort of more representative of like her bridging the two communities together or something like that. If it doesn't, I mean, I guess it doesn't even need to be like religious, but just that spiritual connection or like finding a reason to be connected, I guess, or finding similarities in their I mean, two different worlds, but finding similarities in their different worlds. It reminded me of the, I forget the name of it, the other side of the fence. Like when we were talking about that, like two totally different worlds, but somehow they have to bridge the gap. So
yeah. Because like the way she bridged the gap mainly was through church, because she talked about going to church, you know, both communities. And then like the one song she sang at the end was like, it was when she had learned in the like slave church, but then she sang in her language or something. So I don't know, that was interesting.
So like spirituality brought them together or something.
So that was kind of like the link there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
So then I'm looking at this one question. What's the real miracle of crossing Bach Cheeto? Is that like another religious? Do you guys think? Is that like a
I mean, I don't think I this is so hard. I think I don't look at like miracles as a religious thing. I look at them as like an energy thing from the universe, like just synchronicity, right? So like being in the right place at the right time for the right thing to happen, and how everything is connected. And when you get connected, then you're apt to see that more often and realize that more often. So I don't know. I have a hard time dissecting like religious.
right?
yeah. Well, I think it could
symbolism,
be like, I mean, it could be a number of things, because it could be the fact that these two like unlikely communities, or at least it seems unlikely, would like form that bond to help each other.
right?
The fact that little Mo was able to lead them across the river when he didn't know how, you know, or like the fact that, you know, the people chasing them didn't see them, or it could be a lot of different things, I think. So I don't know.
Not just one.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the end, I kind of talked about a little bit in my write-up about, there was a question about, like, in today's world, what does an Indian do? And I thought, like, for 3rd through 5th graders, that was, like, a really good question just to like, have a discussion, like, you know, the stereotype versus, like, Native Americans that are, like, actually in their lives. And so that was kind of a cool question. I felt like, so it was like, oh, do they ride a horse? Do they drive a car? Do they go to college?
Yeah.
So.
Do you guys read Sherman Alexie at all, or have you seen any of his films?
I do.
I haven't.
That would be like a contemporary addition to that conversation, is to be able to talk about like him, and he's an Indian, so I like this question.
Yeah, we talked about that last week a little bit. How he has like a couple books with the title Indian in them, like Indian Killer and The Part-Time Job of an Indian, or I have it on my bookshelf. I don't know what it's called, but yeah. Yeah, just the identity thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Did anybody answer like some of those like advanced level questions? Let me look at them. Let's see. So a lot of them have to do with like religion again, I think. Well, some of them.
I talked about number 1 a little bit, like were they really invisible? And I think maybe Scott answered that one too. And I was thinking like, no, not really, but because like the white people on the plantation were used to not really noticing the slaves and stuff, that in that sense they were invisible because they were just in the background, people they didn't pay attention to or really probably see as people in the same sense as them. And so I thought it kind of connected like that, maybe. So
I would agree with that. I think that would go back to like also what we were talking about, what you guys were all talking about last week in the discussion about different types of dark skin. So especially during that time period, to a white person, all dark skinned people are the same. They're just dark skinned. They're not. So even if they weren't really invisible, they probably wouldn't have necessarily that much distinguished them from their slaves, right? Like they wouldn't have even like thought to distinguish them from their slaves, I guess.
No, definitely.
It kind of reminds me of one of the articles I read. I'm trying to remember which week it was. It was the week that was like all those videos about just about racism. I remember there was a lot of videos of like elementary school age like African American children talking about it, and then there was like all those comics that I read about like those like little comments that people make that are like really racist, but are just like the little things that add up all day.
Like the microaggressions.
Yeah, yeah, that's the word. But one of them was talking about how like this woman at like meetings at work, how what she feels like when she's talking, like nobody's really listening, but that like if and that she's constantly interrupted at work by like white people, then everyone will like turn and start listening to them, even though she was like in the middle of a sentence. But it's kind of like that, I guess. Like when it's like I think the question was worded as like discuss ethnic invisibility. I think that's kind of similar. Just let nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting like point to bring up, like whether the ethnic invisibility thing is like the point, or if it's trying to get into like that religious aspect, I guess. Like, I don't know. Because if Martha Tom is an angel, and there's like this whole like mythical thing going on apparently, then I don't know. It's hard, I guess. It's hard to like see like I don't know, just like the race part of it and the culture part of it separated from the religion part of it, I guess.
Yeah,
you know?
I think I see what you're saying, because like if it was a miracle that they weren't seen, then that would probably connect to why they weren't seen before too. Is that what you're saying?
I'm like kind of wondering like what like what was the author's intent? Like, because like we had, you know, it seems like he's pretty credible. It seems like he's part of the. Is he part of the tribe? Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. So his great grandfather walked the Trail of Tears. I don't know, but then it's like, is he trying to say something about Native American culture, or is his like overarching thing religion, or I don't know, you know what I mean? Like what?
Well, in the discussion thing, the note from him, it says, it's talking about like the friendship between the American Indians and the African American people, and then thousands of today's African American community members are actually mixed blood Indians. I sincerely hope this story will empower and encourage people of all races to speak openly and proudly of their heritage, for American story is one of mixed races and cultures.
Right.
So it's almost, yeah. It's focusing more on the friendship and how the cultures intermingled and stuff, sounds like, huh?
I did really like that part of the book, though, too. I never really heard about that in school, about how Native Americans were involved in, like, the Underground Railroad, which, like, I've learned later, like, was a huge thing. But, like, my whole, like, in high school, even my, like, U.S. history class, our whole unit on Native Americans, we watched The Last of the Mohicans.
Or Dances with Wolves or something.
Yeah,
totally
we watched that movie, and our teacher like took a nap every day, and that was our entire unit on like culture and life was The Last of the Mohicans. So, yeah, I thought this book was I wasn't particularly fond of this book, but I do like the idea of bringing, books like this, or even this one, that kind of address that relationship that like actually did happen. Since I feel like a lot of textbooks don't even really cover that.
I think what you just said is like a huge point that was made in the Jigsaw reading this week, which is that history books are like, they leave out massive amounts of information. And I mean, we all know that like the history books are written by the people that have power, right? So like whatever is not important to the people with the power is not going in the history books. And obviously both of those cultures, both the African American culture and the Native American culture, even up until today, but both of those cultures are super marginalized. We obviously didn't care about really what was happening to them back then, so we didn't put it in our history.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we know that, but kids sure don't. So
right, yeah, totally.
Well, and I think one question I had after reading all that stuff was like, because I know there's been like a huge push like the past like 10, 15 years, like, you know, Christopher Columbus, like all this stuff's a lie, like blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if like, I don't know, it's been a while since I've been in like high school or taken a history class. Like I'm wondering if it's getting better, if, you know, like textbooks for kids in high school, even the past like 5 or so years, are getting like more honest or like including more viewpoints. Or
I mean, I'm only 21 and my high school history books were still pretty racist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. One of my questions this week, one of my like muddy questions this week was, how do you know, like, or how to tell whether or not a book is a good and accurate historical context without being an expert on whatever subject the book is on. So like, I can't possibly know everything about everything in order to select a bunch of books for a curriculum. So how to find the best ones about a historical subject that nobody was there for, without like a lot about it myself. So
right. I don't know. I wrote it down.
Yeah. Like with the accuracy tests and stuff that we talked about this week too in the Jigsaw, but even with that, like you said, Erin, if you don't know the historical context, it's hard to know.
Right.
So, yeah.
So maybe like, I don't know. I had read a little bit about what you guys had talked about with the videos and all the stuff on immigration this week, but do you guys just want to talk about like the videos and like any like feelings or?
I have another muddy question from one of the videos, so if we want to talk about that, that's cool.
Cool.
It was from the crossing the border. What's it called?
They both had like crossing the border in them. It was confusing.
Yeah.
It was the crossing the line at the border. Was the video, and it was the YouTube, the link that went directly to YouTube about the guy that got like beaten and killed at the border, or beaten and I just like first was really disappointed that they would have blamed his death on drugs, or just sort of thrown it away. And like they tried to say that he when he died, that it was a methamphetamine overdose, but I'm forgetting the word, the coroner or whatever medical examiner determined that there wasn't a significant enough amount of methamphetamine in his system to have caused him to die. So my question was how, like, this just relates back to like the migrant worker thing from Esperanza Rising and all of that, but how do we keep accountability for the lives of people that technically we might not even know if they exist? So like if somebody comes into the country illegally, then there's really no record that they've ever left their own country, and there's no record that they ever have been in our country. So then if something happens to them, like there has to be some kind of accountability for that, but I don't know like even where to begin with that.
Right.
I think the use of just like technology, like everyone recording these things is
right. Well, and if there wasn't video, like they said, like they tried to get witnesses and nobody would come forward, and then finally some guy said that he had video of what had happened. But like if that video like somehow miraculously had not happened or not been taken, then like we would never know that. So
well, yeah, and that happened in like 2011 or something. And they just settled the court case in like February of this year.
Wow.
Like that's ridiculous. Like
it took that
so
long.
Mad. Yeah, it took that long.
Pretty regular for like murder cases though. Not quite that long maybe, but I think they usually do take quite a few years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But like they gave the family like $1 million, and then they were like, oh, they didn't end up like arresting any of the border patrol officers or firing any of them. And that is terrifying. And like that whole video where they're like knocking over the water that people put out there for them, like, I don't know. It's just like there's a point, like you were saying, Erin, where it's like this is like a human rights thing. Like,
totally.
I get it. And I think Scott had written about that too. Like you have these two sides where it's like, yeah, like this is illegal. Like these people should not be here. But at the same time, like when they come here, we can't treat them like garbage. Like they're not even human.
Right. And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be here illegally, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be here at all, right?
Right.
Like you can't just set about, you might not personally have physically harmed them, but you massively contributed to their harm.
Right.
I think one of the girls said that it was in the Border Stories documentary. It was like the first one on the list. That was really long. Well, that was like an hour and a half long. There was one girl in it that was, I don't remember what she was doing. I think she was either filling up like water stations, or she was like one of the girls that like drove out to the desert to like pick people up and like help bring them back to the city. Like people that were crossing through the desert to get into the US. And she was saying that he was like, sure, like I don't think that they should be coming over here illegally. Like I don't think this is a good thing that they're doing, but also they don't deserve to die in the desert for it. So like
yeah,
it's tricky, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, and we probably have different views if like we lived really close to the border too. That'd also be interesting.
Well, even in that video, there's like, they showed a bunch of Mexican cities down there and people talking from there. Then they showed there's a bunch of cities on the U.S. side, and like half the people in the U.S. that they showed were, trying to help them out, and like had all these organizations to help get them across, to get people water and food and whatever. But also then it showed a bunch of people who were like really upset by the migrants that were coming, and they were setting up their own video cameras and like calling immigration every time they saw someone on the video cameras, and were like out there like,
wow,
basically being guards themselves, even though
they need a better life. Those people need a better life.
I know.
But that's the thing almost, is I think it comes back to privilege, because it's like some of those people down there don't really get what some of the Hispanic people in Mexico might be going through, or like why they might be coming up here. Like, yeah, it might be for a job, but like there's so many other reasons people like flee from Mexico. And it's like, if you're just saying, oh, you're coming here to steal our jobs, like, let me sit out here with a video camera and like watch you, like, I don't know. That just seems so like childish to me, because it's like,
yeah,
even if you think about Esperanza Rising, like you never know what's happening with a person. Like it doesn't matter if they're Hispanic or not. Like you don't know why they need help. You don't know why they're coming here. And if you don't give them like the time of day to like tell you, then you're just being prejudiced.
Right. I wrote that as part of the like notes I took about Esperanza Rising, is like they decided that no matter how terrible it was going to be in the United States for them to come here and be here in the United States, it was better than living the life that they would have had in Mexico. And at the I think it's like in the first like 4 maybe 5 chapters, when after, or maybe the 6th chapter, after her father dies, and I think Tio is uncle, right? This is her uncle. Okay, so when her uncle says like, or when the lawyer says we can't give you the property because women can't own property, and her uncle was like, I'll marry you and you can just be my wife and I'll own the house because I'm a banker and I deserve it. Like I don't blame them for, I mean, they would have very little rights here, but it has to be better, or in their mind has to be better than having absolutely zero rights in Mexico.
Yeah.
And like no foreseeable future for themselves.
Yeah. Because especially with the uncles being so crooked and just, harming them and not having any, any desire to treat them kindly, but they're just in it for themselves.
Always.
I took this class freshman year, and we were learning about, I think it was Panama, maybe, or no, maybe Guatemala. It was one of those, like, it was a country in
Central America.
Somewhere down there, wherever we get most of our bananas from. But it was funny because the point was that like the U.S. got really involved in like the 80s and 90s in their like agricultural system and their economy because of bananas, because we like wanting them to grow like mass amounts of food for us. So we like got really involved and started giving them all this money and stuff. But then like the U.S. kind of basically caused their whole economy to like crash in this country, and so like no matter how much they were farming, they couldn't make enough money to like even feed themselves. Feed their, like they were growing so much food that like it wasn't worth anything there, so the farmers like couldn't really sell their food because it wasn't worth anything because there was so much.
Too much of it.
Yeah, everyone was like going out of business, and like their entire economy crashed in this country. And so everyone starts coming up to the U.S. because they can't like survive in their own country because we caused their whole economy to crash, and then we won't let them into our country because we don't want them to take our jobs. It's like a lot of like people ignore the fact a lot of times that the U.S. is like really involved in all these countries, and like a lot of times when they're not doing well, it's partly because we're not helping the situation.
Right, it wasn't Jamaica, was it?
Here. What?
I had watched a video similar to that. It was Jamaica, like, and how like we basically like ruined Jamaica, and like how people like leave Jamaica and then they're like, yeah, like we hate the Americans because like they have like nothing there but like tourism and like bananas, and half the time it's if their economy is crashing, it's because of us. And so I think there's lots
the
of
same thing
that. Yeah.
That happened with Mexico and limes. Like 4 or 5 years ago, there was like a major something about like the cartel was preventing shipments of limes from coming in to the States because we were cracking down on drug shipments. So they were like, well, I mean, screw you. If we can't get our drugs in, you can't have your limes. So
weird. I hadn't heard of that one.
I know Coca-Cola did that in Mexico too. They had like built a factory, like torn down homes, like polluted this water source, and then like left. Like they decided they didn't want the factory or something. So there was like a whole thing where people were against Coca-Cola for like 2 years. So I don't know. Well, do we want to talk a little bit about Esperanza Rising before we have to go?
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
have anything else?
yeah, we should.
Okay.
The questions Joy put on there, how does this make you see the plight of Mexican and Mexican Americans in the United States today? What about immigration? Does this give you a window or mirror into the life of your students? About how Esperanza and her mom escaped to the U.S.
I had talked a lot about my students, I guess, in my response, because I don't know. I just think there's still so many immigration problems today, and maybe even more so like with politics and everything. I think there's just like so many uncertainties for so many families, and it's not just like, I talked a lot about like migrant students that I've had, but it's not even that. It's just like children who are even visiting Mexico. Like there's all these uncertainties, and I haven't I don't know. There's just so many problems, and I had talked a little bit about how like some of my kids this year didn't come back from Mexico, and like I literally don't know what happened to the one kid, and it freaks me out because like he didn't enroll for school again in the United States. No one knows where he is. Phone calls, like I do not know where this kid went, and I'm like, ooh, that's like terrifying. The one girl I know is stuck there because of papers, because her cousin was in my class. But it's like whenever they can't get across, they always are like, oh, it's the papers. And then that was kind of in Esperanza Rising too. Like, oh, you have to have your papers. But yeah. So I just think it's a hot mess.
Yeah.
That might be a good, I think we need one more muddy question, but that might be a good muddy question, is how to address that kind of thing. Like, what if you are in a classroom with somebody and they go, what if it was over spring break or Christmas break instead of like at the end of the school year, right? So what do you do? How do you address that with a classroom of students that like one of their peers just didn't come back?
That's what happened. Is it was over Christmas break and this kid didn't come back, and it was so sad. And I was like, I don't even know what to say to them. They're like,
right.
We like left his name tag on his desk and everything. It was like a creepy little memorial. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know. So that's a great question, because
What did you say to them?
I was like, oh, well, Eric didn't come back. So I don't know, you guys. Like, I'm trying to figure it out, but it sounds like he went to go see his dad, so I'm sure they're having a great time. And like,
yeah.
Yeah.
That is really scary. Did you guys read about, it's not exactly the same thing, but have you guys followed at all about the student that went to North Korea and like stole a hanging banner or something from I don't even remember, it was some silly like flag or something, but they held him like in prison in a terrible North Korean prison for a really, really, really long time. And that's legitimately just based on what is going on in their country. It has nothing to do with us at all. I don't even know if he's out yet.
It's like the travel ban, though.
Right. Well, and he went, I don't remember, you'd have to, I could look it up, or you can look it up if you're interested, but I think he went with like a school group or something, or went as part of studying something, and while he was there, like did something that here you would just get kind of a slap on the wrist for, or like the cops would come and say like misdemeanor, give us our banner back or whatever. But it was like in a public, it would be like if you went to a concert and stole a poster out from the wall outside. You know,
Yeah.
it was something really, really marginal, but he was about to get like capital punishment for it. So
Yeah, well, definitely different countries have different rules. So,
right,
No.
right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Hannah, how long
sorry.
has
what-
that kid? How long has that boy been gone? This was this last Christmas break.
Yeah, he left in November, and he hasn't
Yeah.
enrolled in any school in the United States because they'd asked for his records. So I still have his records. So
Wow. Oh. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. And then like with stuff like the travel ban coming up, and it's like, well, this isn't going to help anybody. I don't know. I feel like that's a whole nother topic, but just like
Right.
thinking about anybody from any country like trying to come to America for any of those reasons we've talked about, like, I don't know, just saying no because like their country is like involved with ISIS or something just seems like very like one-sided to me at least, but I don't know.
Well, just
Right.
overall, like, a lot of kids are anxious to start with, and then it just adds to it because, like, they don't know. I mean, they're kids. They don't understand a lot, and so they hear stuff. They hear their parents talking, and yeah, they don't know what's going on. And
When their brains like run wild or jump to like
Yeah.
radical conclusions that
so,
adults would not.
so it kind of, I don't know, just adds another layer to teaching. So,
Yeah.
So many layers.
Yeah.
Last November, there was a whole lot of weird conversations happening in elementary school, but I was glad I did not have to mediate.
Yeah. Yeah.
oh yeah,
It was terrible.
it was bad.
We did like an election for some terrible reason, and it was like the worst, most awkward, just like, I don't know. It's hard to like not tell kids your like your political views. Like, it was.
Well, they'll ask too. They'll ask. I mean,
Yeah.
their parents are talking about it, so I'm sure they don't know anything about it, but they'll ask you just to hear the answer. They don't really know what it means either way. They just know that you agree with them. You agree with their parents, or you don't, basically.
Because Scholastic had this whole like, oh, like you should vote, get the ballot out, like for kids, right? So they had like these little like weekly readers they sent out for like each candidate. And like each one was so stupid. It was like, oh, Donald Trump grew up in New York and Hillary Clinton grew up in this state and this is his favorite color and this is her favorite color. I'm like, this has nothing to do with anything. I was so mad. I was like, this is like the stupidest thing. This is like, do I like Courtney more or Aaron more? Which one do I want for my friend? Like, it was so dumb. So I was just like very frustrated. Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah, that's
It was kind of, well, not funny, but interesting because I was subbing that day and I had first grade class in the morning and a fifth grade in the afternoon. And I was kind of nervous about the fifth grade because I was like, well, they're probably going to be talking about it. But then it was the first graders who came right in the morning, like just talking about this and that. And then the fifth graders, like by the time I got to them in the afternoon, like they didn't even mention it. So it was interesting.
Did any of them ask about the wall?
Oh yeah.
Like
I've
what
heard kids
were
talk about
those
the wall.
conversations?
Or they'll just be like, well, you know, he's going to build a wall. Or like, or so-and-so is going to get stuck on the other side of a wall. Or just like stuff like that. And it's just like, well, you know, we don't, you know, that's just, there's no plan at the moment. I was like, we don't need to worry about that. Let's go back to, you know, ABCs, you know, in first grade. So.
Well, I saw a video like around the time of the election of it looked like an elementary school, but it might have been a middle school, of this group of kids in a cafeteria all standing up and chanting, like yelling at this, like, I don't know if she was Mexican or where she was from, but I'm sorry, I should not say that, not where she was from. I do not know what ethnicity she was, but they were all yelling at her, like, build the wall, and like chanting, and it was the most like awful thing. She was like sobbing at a table in a cafeteria, and some kid like posted it online.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Devastating having to watch something like that.
Yeah, that's
Not
terrible.
imagine, like being that girl. It was really sad.
Also, and then like the people that were your friends yesterday are now like
Yeah.
not your friends anymore, and they don't even know why. Like those kids don't know what they're saying. They just know that like someone told them that that's what it should be.
Well, and kids that age like believe like they have the same views their parents do, you know. So if their
Totally.
parents are saying things about whatever, like politics wise at home, like kids
Yeah.
go to school and say the same things.
Yeah, I have a friend who married a Mexican guy, and their daughter is 4.5, almost 5, and her mom heard her like right after the election was saying, "I hate Mexicans. I don't want to hang out with auntie and uncle because they're Mexicans or whatever." And my friend, they don't talk like that in their house, so she's like, "I don't know where you would have heard this. Like, I don't know where you would have picked this up, but it doesn't even. Somebody could have been in line behind them at the grocery store and said that, and they would pick it up and repeat it." So
Yeah.
That's too bad.
yeah.
Well, on that happy note,
Yeah.
is there anything else you want to talk about? We're at 40, so I think we're pretty good.
Do we have 3 muddy questions written down?
Yes, I have 3
Oh
right
yeah,
now.
do we? What
I have, how can we tell if a history book is credible without being an expert in history? How do we keep accountability for the lives of people that we don't even know exist? And how do we address, like, if kids don't come back, or immigration issues with children in the classroom?
good. Okay.
Yeah, those are good. This is all,
Cool.
hard things.
All right. Well, then I think next week at 7, right? Is that what? Because Scott had sent out that like email.
Oh, yeah.
I'm on an airplane next week at 7, but I already emailed Joy, so she knows.
Where are you going? Somewhere fun?
Somewhere fun. Yeah, we're going to Las Vegas, but it's for my grandmother's interment, like her memorial service. So it's a fun place, and my whole family is going. So
I'm sorry.
Thank you. It'll be a good time. It'll just be like not the same biggest trip as
Yeah.
kind of been, but and then on August 3rd, I thought I was out of town, but I'm not. So I'll be back I'll be there for that one.
Cool. Sounds good.
Okay.
I usually
ahead.
get home around like 7-ish, exactly-ish.
We can do 7:30 or
I can do 7, but it's just like sometimes it might be like 7:05 by the time I can get on the computer.
Yeah. Well, 7:30 is okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't
fine.
matter.
Yeah.
So,
All right, cool. Bye, guys.
Okay, cool.
sounds